fee to this station.
This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening. Welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we're having an Ask Us Anything night where you can call in and ask any kind of legal question you've got. You can call in, be live on the air with us, 256-536-0077. You can also text us to that number, and we have some of your text questions coming in tonight too. You can, any day of the week, send your legal question on any topic. You send it by email to lawcall@waaytv.com, and when we get to a show that's on point, we pull some out. We've got some of your email questions with us tonight. We've also got Will Leake from Timberlake, League & Brooks with us tonight.
All right, Sharon, happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy
You had a
Mother's
good
Day to
day?
everybody out there had a great day. We all got a little mother in us, right?
You've got some nurturing in you. We
in
know
there.
that you do.
You know, Mother's Day brings about, gratitude and sorrow and pain for all those who've lost their mothers out there. And, Sharon, oftentimes when we handle death cases, we're trying to evaluate a mother's worth, a mother's caring. What is it to go without a mother?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? And on Mother's Day, it kind of hits home a little more. When I try cases and talk about the value of a mother, a lot of times it goes to Scripture. Mother is the only one who has unbelievable, selfless love, no consequences, provider of grace. When we were in church today, and our pastor, Travis Collins, talked a little bit about grace. What is grace? Justice and mercy and grace. So if you're driving a car and you're speeding, you get pulled over and get a ticket, that's justice.
Okay.
If you get pulled over and get and by the officer and he lets you go, that's mercy.
Okay.
If you're speeding and you get pulled over and he gives you a jelly donut, you don't deserve that, but that's grace. And right, mothers, provide an abundance. And I looked at a couple of things, and it's throughout. So God compares His own love to that of a mother's love: comfort, sacrifice, protection. A mother's love is patient, enduring, forgiving, and selfless, a reflection of the divine love itself. Right. And so, to all you mothers out there, we appreciate you. And, for those out there who've lost your mother, they're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to still have your mother around, hug her neck, talk to her every day if you can, and appreciate it, because a lot of people out there have lost mothers. And when we try and quantify, it's, how do you do that, right? I mean, nobody loves you like your mama.
Yep.
And so happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. If you've lost your mother, I'm so sorry, and it creates a lot of pain. But on a wonderful day like this, it's just, we appreciate the moms out there. We sure
Sometimes things turn around too when you have a mom that's getting older and might be in nursing home care, and suddenly you're supposed to be looking out for your mom, and you get worried about what kind of care they're getting. So that's one of the areas where the law comes into it, and protecting moms and standing up for moms. You see a lot of that.
Right, and we're all, if we're lucky, we're all going to grow old. Once a man, twice a child. And, as we know, when you get older, things start kind of falling apart. You start forgetting things, unable to take care of yourself. And, a lot of people call and say, hey, do I put my mother in a nursing home? And of course, that's a family, personal decision. And if it goes wrong or something happens, oftentimes we get the call and go in and look at nursing home abuse cases. And, we tell clients to be available, be present, befriend the nurses. It's a thankless job.
Yes,
and you've got, when we take these depositions, it often comes down to poor staffing.
Not enough.
Not enough people.
There. Yeah.
And people are the most expensive things, that nursing homes pay for. And when they can try and cut the bottom line, they cut out human beings. So those LPNs, those techs, they're there to help. Try and befriend them. Try and take the high road, because, they're cheaper. The less experienced, they're cheaper for the nursing home, and it's a money game. And oftentimes Medicaid pays that.
Yeah.
And so, be present. Befriend the director of nursing. Talk to those people down there so you can be, on the front end of what's going on with your loved one. And oftentimes when you're absent, they have, you'll have one LPN with 20 patients.
Yeah.
And so we took depositions years ago, and it turned out that they were spending less than a nickel per day for snacks. And so when you're looking at a nursing home, less than a nickel a day. So when you're looking at these nursing homes, see how much they spend on the patients. See what kind of modalities they have for whether physical therapy, cognitive, physical, all those things. And hopefully you won't have to call someone, like us to go in and investigate. We've had people die of hydration, die of malnutrition and things that can be, we get it. People get old, they get sick, and they perish, right? But, you want to make sure it's for the reasons that we can't help. And so we see a lot of that, and they're sad cases, and we've won against the same nursing homes over and over. And then they change director of nursing, and it's the same thing, that it's up to the parent, it's up to the children to go and look after mom and be present and be available so they can get the best care possible.
We've got some callers waiting. We've got Dawn on the line with a question from Florence. Hi, Dawn. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yeah, I'm on Social Security.
Okay.
And I make $400 a month more than my wife does. So my question is, when I pass away, does she pick up that $400 off my Social Security?
Okay. So the combined part of your Social Security, I don't think can surpass, I think it's 80%. And so basically, whichever one, go and talk with, elder law, whoever's doing wills, trusts, power of attorney. Those are good things to have. But oftentimes you'll do those calculations. She won't just pick that up, because when you combine those two, there's a formula that spits out what she will end up with. Now, if it's more beneficial, she may take over your benefits. But when you combine them, there's a cap or limitation. And so it's just not that simple. So go and work those numbers with an attorney or with someone who's doing wills and estates, and then find out what's the best benefit for her. You never know who's going first, and you as well.
You can also make an appointment with the Social Security office. You can either call them and set up a time.
Mm-hmm.
You can just drop in and take a number and wait, but you may be waiting a long time. You and your wife could go sit down with somebody, and they would pull up your exact information and tell you and answer some of those questions for you live and in person. So that might be a way to do it too. You can also make appointments for that online, and that would save you a lot of time sitting there waiting.
Right. That's
We've
right.
got Rich on the line with a question from Maysville. Hi, Rich. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
My question is that, I hope you had a good Mother's Day
Thank you.
and enjoyed it.
Sure did.
My
Beautiful day.
question is that I put a fence up, and I've had problems with a lady next door that owns the property on the side of me and behind me. And I put a fence up because I got 2 dogs now, and I don't want them to get loose on her property, and she's got 2 dogs.
Yep.
Well, my problem is that she made a comment to a guy that don't come on my property because if you're over the line, the property line, I'll tear it down. I don't want to argue with this person. I put a fence up because I got 2 dogs, and I don't want them get hit by a car or get loose.
Sure.
What do I do? Wait till she gets a lawyer? Because I done told them, hey, you know what? Get a lawyer. Let's go to court and let a judge decide.
So she thinks your fence is on her property?
No. I put it. When I bought this property, it was a fence already up. So I put my new fence on the other side of it.
So inside the line.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
To be sure and hope, oftentimes, communication is better than going the legal route. Hopefully you can agree with each other, but if not, it's going to cost you time and money. But if you got to go there, you got to go there. But to start off, you may want to get a survey to show exactly where the line is. And if you guys have a level of communication, you may want to provide that survey, and that may head it off at the pass. You may want to go in and get a survey together if you guys are that agreeable, to at least know, because again, if the fence is on her property, it's her fence, even if you put it up, and y'all need to know where that line is, and hopefully that'll keep you from having to go into court and spending time, money, effort, and have ill will towards each other. That's your neighbor, and you got to live next to her, so peace is always best.
And you can't really sue in advance, right? Right now there's not a problem, right?
Well,
you can't sue and say she's threatening, can you?
I mean, she could sue to say, hey, this is on my property, but she may not know.
Right.
And that would be premature, and she might be proven wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's a time and money waster. And
Yeah.
so, getting a survey is the best way to find out. you know, she's made some threats or something. And I just don't think filing an action. If it's, you know, if he's feeling threatened, you may want to get a police report and maybe have that documented.
Good.
Hopefully, it's not that intense. But if it is, make sure to get it documented, and then you may have to go through the legal channels if it's gone south that bad.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. We've gotten in a text question about a nursing home issue, and somebody has lost their mom, so we want to talk about that. We'll be right back. It's Ask Us Anything night. Call in.
which pays an advertising fee to this station.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call, the Tennessee Valley's only live legal call-in show for 30 years and counting. Presented by the award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm Timberlake, League & Brooks, featuring the knowledge and experience of attorney Michael Timberlake, attorney Will League, attorney Heath Brooks, attorney William Meservey, attorney Bobby Marsh, and hosted by family law attorney Sharon Dovian. Your rights, your calls, live. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so we're taking your calls and questions on any legal topic, and it's Mother's Day. You've had a good Mother's Day?
It's been a great Mother's Day.
Did you get to see your mom today?
I'm fortunate enough to have my mother with us. Went to church with her this morning. Oh, there's my sweet mama.
Beautiful.
And two of my daughters, Betty and Harley, and we got to spend the day with my mom and their grandmom. It was a wonderful day. Did you have a good Mother's Day?
I did have a good
There's
Mother's
your mom right
Day.
there.
There's
Oh, look
my
at
mom.
Sharon
My
back
mom,
in the
Judy.
day.
Don't you love those prints? The 1970s are great prints. My mom,
Love
Judy,
it.
in Fort Payne. She's
Love
doing
it.
great. Oh, she's a pretty
sweet.
mama. She still is too. So happy
Wonderful.
Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We've got callers waiting with questions. Michael is on the line with a question from Higdon. Hi, Michael. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
Yes, I need to know if I have to sign papers or not to go get married.
Sign papers to go get married. Yes, you have to actually fill out documents. A number of years ago, they got rid of, in Alabama, common law marriages. So it used to be that if you just held yourself out and you told people, we're married, this is my wife, this is my husband, that could be considered marriage. But if you haven't created one already, then to be married today, you would have to fill out papers, sign the papers, and turn them in at the courthouse.
Now, is that a marriage license?
It is the document that filling out to get the marriage license.
Application.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Congratulations, Michael. Hope it's good. We got in this email question or text question about nursing homes, and we were just talking about them. Somebody had written in, my mom was in a nursing home for 2 years, and she was fine on Saturday, And 2 days later, the nursing home called me on Tuesday and stated she'd been unresponsive since that Monday. That was 2 days later. I asked why I wasn't notified on Monday. My mom was texting me that Monday morning. My sister and I had asked the nursing home to transport her to the hospital, and the director of nursing talked to the nurse practitioner, and they denied our request, and my mom died that Tuesday evening. Now, isn't that against the law to deny moving someone to the hospital?
Okay. Number one, you can go down and take your mother to the ER.
Okay.
The question is it malpractice? Is it a breach of the standard of care? Okay. They can refuse your request. However, what if it's medically necessary that that patient be transferred to the hospital? Under Alabama's Medical Liability Act, we have to show that the standard of care for a similarly situated physician or nurse practitioner or nurse, the standard of care requires that that patient, let's say the symptoms, the standard of care required emergency transportation to the hospital, and they fail to do it even after your request. Yes, that could be malpractice. That could be, it is against the law. However, if that standard of care is met, let's say the standard of care doesn't require that type of transfer to the hospital, she perishes. It's not a breach of the standard of care, so it wouldn't be malpractice. But again, as we talked about in the beginning, just make sure you're available, you're involved. You can and may go down and check your mother out if you have that authority to take her or him to the hospital and have him or her checked out. They do not have to transfer unless the breach of the standard of care requires the health care professional to do so. You'd have to have an expert come in and testify that the standard of care required that type of treatment. So, it depends on what the standard of care required, what her underlying symptoms were, to then determine what is medically necessary for that particular patient under those circumstances and what you knew at the time.
Wow.
And so all those things have to be looked at.
If the mom had signed documents, done some pre-planning, and had a do not resuscitate or something like that, and they're saying she's not responsive, do nursing homes have to follow those instructions, or is that hospital or doctor, or is that?
If they're a healthcare professional, then they have to follow those if they're on notice of that.
And they didn't say that, but I was just thinking.
We've had cases where they've had a DNR and then they do resuscitate. And so it's a difficult case for families and lawyers to then sort out, and we're talking about wrongful life. Is that something that you want to file that hey, I'm alive and I shouldn't be? I don't think you're going to garner much sympathy.
Yeah.
What if
my mom is still with me, and we told you not to resuscitate her.
Right.
Yeah,
so it puts you in a weird position, but you want to honor those wishes, of course.
Yeah.
And when they're not, sometimes that, let's say you incur a lot of medical expenses that you wouldn't know, we'll look at things like that, but it's a sticky widget to try and make a claim for wrongful life.
Yeah.
Sure
Okay,
is.
we got in this text question. I had they said in quote, foot specialist. I think they mean that in a bad way.
Right.
Treat me 6 months for a nail fungus, no test to make sure, just antibiotics. Turns out I had a dangerous melanoma, nail cancer, and now I'm receiving immune therapy cancer treatment. Can I sue the idiot podiatrist?
There's two things going on here, okay? Number one, should the podiatrist, based on his clinical and physical exam, there's a standard of care, there's those words again, does that require the podiatrist to then do a culture or some type of test to determine whether or not that's cancer? That's number one. Was the standard of care breached by failing to obtain a test or a culture of that particular area? The second prong would be, is the delay in treatment, did that make the cancer was there already, right? But did that delay in treatment cause any additional damage or issues with your particular care that you're getting cancer for? And so if it is not, it's kind of like no harm, no foul, right? Did the delay cause any further issues? And oftentimes when we take an oncologist's deposition, let's say the patient perishes, then we'd say, doctor, do you have, based on your medical training experience, do you have any opinion as to whether or not there would have been a different outcome for this patient? And if the doctor doesn't know, then we can't prove, or we haven't met our burden of proof, because as plaintiffs, we have the burden of proof to your reasonable satisfaction that there was a breach of standard of care, and that breach actually caused additional damage or even death. And so oftentimes, the doctors cannot testify to that. But let's say it's an extreme case where let's say you had a mammogram and they didn't diagnose breast cancer and you waited 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, the doctor may be inclined to say, look, had we been able to treat it, there's a 70% chance that we beat this type of cancer. And so all those things come into play, and there's many different hurdles before you get that case to a jury. And so all those boxes have to be checked before it even gets to a jury. There's many different avenues the case can be kicked out by the court unless we meet all these burdens before it even gets to a jury. So it makes it difficult. But in this case, those two questions have to be answered.
Okay. We've got Renee on the line with a question from Madison. Hi, Renee. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Hi, good evening. So you all have been talking about nursing home care. The thing I was wondering is if you have a loved one in a facility and you are concerned, about the level of care, and I know you were talking about, different things you should do to be involved, be present, that type of thing. But still, when you're not there and you're concerned about how your loved one is being treated, what are the laws regarding having some type of cameras, internal cameras in your loved one's room, or is there a violation to the worker's privacy when you're just trying to monitor what's going on in the room? I know, some daycares will have cameras where you can log in and see what's going on at a daycare.
Yeah.
But how does that work when it comes to elderly in a nursing home facility? Are you allowed to do something like that?
Right, and that's a good question, Renee. And a lot of people do put video cameras in there to check on mom and dad and monitor that. And some of the issues, let's say there's a roommate involved, and can you film a roommate or someone who didn't adhere or give permission to be taped, and that makes it difficult, okay? If you rent a private room, that is your parents' room, and you can put a camera in there unless there's some policy against that in the contract with the nursing home. And so I would go through that and make sure there's no prohibition, especially if you have a private room. But it makes it difficult when there's another patient and you're violating HIPAA by filming that other patient. Now, we've had cases where they've had permission to put cameras in. We've had cases where the family went ahead and put cameras in. And so in all the cases that we've had, we have never had a family prosecuted or a violation for putting cameras in the room, but we're always concerned about filming other patients who were there and the HIPAA law requirements. You sure are.
Got in this email question. I was in a car accident today. The person that hit me, this is the one from Lewis. Lewis says, the person that hit me moved his vehicle as soon as he hit me. The police arrived and couldn't determine fault. The guy told the officer that I got into his lane, so no citation was given to either one of us. What can I do about it now?
That's tough. We tell clients to try and get pictures of the scene. Try not to move your vehicles until the police officer allow you to. But what if you're in the middle of the road?
Yeah.
What if you're in a hazardous position? You have a duty to get yourself out of that hazardous position. Document it the best you can, but safety first. Let's figure out liability later. If you're in a position of peril, get the heck out of there. Get on the side of the road. But if you're not, if you can get pictures of the scene, that'd be great. I've had jurors appreciate pictures and say, thank you so much, I'm so glad we have these. And then I've had jurors think, well, what are they thinking taking pictures?
Oh, they're suspicious of them.
What are they trying
They're
to
up
hide?
to something.
Right, so we've had it cut both ways, but it's kind of like a gun. You rather have it, not need it, not have it. And so we recommend getting photographs so you can document. But short of that, if you're in a perilous position, you're in the middle of the road, there's traffic speeding around, get to a safe place and we'll sort that out later.
But the police officer is not the judge, right? And the police report's not coming in anyway.
Right. That's right. Unless the police officer was there and saw the wreck, he or she's report is not coming in. Okay. Well, that report's not coming in anyway. The officer's testimony would come in, but the police report is hearsay. It's an out-of-court statement offered to prove the matter asserted in the case. And what's in the police report, a lot of that is hearsay, and that does not come into evidence. We have jurors, wondering, just give us a police report. Let us look at the police report. Well, we can't because it's hearsay. And oftentimes we want it in there and the other side objects. I'd love to give it to you, but I can't even tell you that I want you to have it. And then the judges, we're not allowed to do that.
We're going to take a break. Be right back.
which pays an advertising fee to this station.
If you haven't gotten your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Will League, Timberlake League and Brooks in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com, and if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And our very own Sharon Dovey at Family Law Attorney, 539-7337, SharonFamilyLaw.com. Our very own mother, happy Mother's Day,
Happy
Sharon.
Mother's Day.
I hope you've had a great day.
I have. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. See you next week.